There's a truth beyond our knowledge. There's compassion beyond our pain. There's a future burning brighter. There's a love to guide our way. There's a truth beyond our knowledge. There's compassion beyond our pain. There's a future burning brighter. There's a love to guide our way. There's a truth beyond our knowledge. There's compassion beyond our pain. There's a future burning brighter. There's a love to guide our way. There's a truth beyond our knowledge. There's compassion beyond our pain. There's a future burning brighter. There's a love to guide our way. There's a truth beyond our knowledge. There's compassion beyond our pain. There's a future burning brighter. There's a love to guide our way. There's a truth beyond our knowledge. There's compassion beyond our pain. There's a future burning brighter. There's a love to guide our way. There's a
I am resilient, I trust the movement, I negate the chaos, uplift the negative, I'll show up at the table again and again and again. I'll close my mouth and learn to listen. Oh, 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 oh. Oh, 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 oh. Oh, 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 oh. Oh, oh, these times are poignant, the winds have shifted. It's all we can do to stay uplifted. Pipelines through backyards, wolves howling out front. Yeah, I got my crew, but truth is what I want. Realignment on point, power to the peaceful, prayers to the waters, women at the center, all vessels open to give and receive. Let's see the system brought down to its knees. Oh, 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 oh. show up at the table again and again and again. I'll close my mouth and learn to listen. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power.
There's a truth beyond our knowledge. There's compassion beyond our pain. There's a future burning brighter. There's a love to guide our way. There's a truth beyond our knowledge. There's compassion beyond our pain. There's a future burning brighter. There's a love to guide our way. There's a truth beyond our knowledge. There's compassion beyond our pain. There's a future burning brighter. There's a love to guide our way. There's a truth beyond our knowledge. There's compassion beyond our pain. There's a future burning brighter. There's a love to guide our way. There's a
Good morning and welcome to Foothills and our 11 a.m. service coming to you on Facebook, on our website, and on your smart TV, hopefully. Although in the last few weeks, they all haven't worked at the same time, but we're doing our best. I'm Sean, one of the ministers of this church that connects to you through various means of the internet, bringing you the message of courage and love, which is the heart of our mission of unleashing courageous love. It is good to be with you on this morning. Now, if you're watching with us on Facebook, I invite you to go into that comment section, the chat below, and just introduce yourself. It is always great to know who is joining us and where you're joining from and who you're joining with. We are a community that extends far beyond, even who we think we are. And so we'd love to know who is joining us in this online space together. Now, it is fall, isn't it? Oh, which is good because I am enjoying the little Christmas that's coming into this northern Colorado air. And it is good. For me, it's bringing up a lot of memories. So I'd love to hear what those memories are for you. So if you want to put in the chat, what are some of your fall memories? It's another good way of seeing who's here and what memories are coming up for us. I have a lot of memories. I grew up in Canada, so fall was about 2.5 weeks. But during that time, the kind of chill in the morning, the Halloween costumes that had to go around a snowsuit, all of that made me feel like fall was here. Now, if you're joining us for the first time or still feeling a little new, I just want to speak directly to you for a moment. Hi, we're so glad you've joined us. This is a space that we've created, this online space in which we try to remind ourselves of some really important fundamental values that we share as a community, things that are often easier said than done, right? We believe that every one of us is worthy of love and belonging, and that we're all in this life together, which is easy to say, but it's hard to actually live, even in our own lives. And so we gather to practice, to remind ourselves, to tell stories of inspiration that help us, walk that talk, to live that life of integrity. Now, if what we do here resonates with you, if after the service, the stories that we share, which today are really powerful, are kind of resonating and you'd like to get involved, I invite you to text the word newish to that number on the screen. I think it's somewhere over here. You text the words newish. We'd love to get to know you. I see that as you reaching out a hand to us, and we can't wait to reach back to you, to get to know you and see how you might find your place in our community. And if you give us your address, we'd love to send you a gift in the mail to show our appreciation. All right, I'm going to move us into our worship our opening song in just a minute. But the first thing I'd like to do is, if you're watching on Facebook, feel free to share this broadcast, maybe tag a few people, send a message. So many people find our community because, well, a person invites them in. And being on Facebook and online, this is a perfect opportunity to invite people to watch with us. So give you a second to do that. And what we're going to do is we're going to move into our opening song, which is Spirited Away.
Remember when we sang, we made echoes off the greenhouse walls. The harmonies we made, our ghosts are wandering these halls. Who wants you? Who haunts you? We are surrounded by such history and change, and like the ancients, we are spirited away. The ceiling is the sky, the day is night, deep-hearted alive. There's water and there's fire, there's trembling and there's desire. Who wants you? Who haunts you? Echoes dancing in my blood. Echoes dancing, how can we refrain? Shadow take our places here in this ballet. We are surrounded by such history and change, and like the ancients, we are spirited away. Who wants you? Who haunts you? Who wants you? Who haunts you?
Our worship theme this month is Living with Ghosts, which might have felt a little spooky or a little silly at the beginning, and maybe something that made sense at Halloween. But now that we're past that, you might be wondering why. The idea of ghosts isn't always something that is scary. There are also good ghosts, ancestral ghosts, those from whom we inherited basically, well, everything. The tradition of Unitarian Universalism and this congregation here in Fort Collins exists on some level because our spiritual ancestors were seeking a healing alternative to the shaming ways of hellfire and brimstone preachers. We came about as an antidote to shame. We come from people who rejected the soul-stained story of original sin, who rejected the idea of hell. We come from people who claim and celebrate each human's innate personal connection to the sacred, a connection that doesn't require the church or the clergy as mediators. We come from people who proclaimed that each one of us is born whole and beautiful, with an inborn wholeness that no one can take away, and that nothing can cast us outside the circle of worthiness and belonging. Firmly placed in this lineage, we gather this morning to honor with clear eyes the ambiguity and complexities of being human. that each one of us is broken and beautiful, that no one could ever be defined by the worst thing they've done or how they've survived the most painful thing. Our lineage proclaims that we each have the capacity to heal and grow our souls and to amplify love in the world. And those are the embers of truth, of love and liberation that we come together this Sunday to stoke and to tend. With that lineage in mind, I'm going to light our chalice, symbol of our living and growing faith. I invite you to join with me in the words of our shared covenant that begin with the word love. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Love is the spirit of this church, and it is in that spirit that we walk with one another through our joys and our sorrows, and especially in the ways these things tend to arrive all at once in this tangled blessing that we call life. I'm going to invite us into a time of prayer and contemplation. Spirit of life, this morning we hold many healing thoughts for those in our community who are going through tough times. Our healing wishes are with Lana Fain as she recovers from a serious ankle sprain. Our prayers are with Wayne Phillips as she recovers from a breakthrough case of COVID-19. We send our love to Nancy Higgins, who is struggling with illness. Our prayers are with Sabrina Davis as she grieves the unexpected death of her fiance, Lonnie Noah. Our love is with Maria Logston as she grieves the loss of her father, Bernard. Our love and care is with Carol Coffey and her daughter, Leslie Arnold, who attended the funeral for their 19-year-old grandson and nephew, Nolan, last weekend. Nolan died by suicide. Finally, we mourn the death and celebrate the life of Barbara Fleming. Barbara grew up at Foothills and attended religious education here back when the church was over on College with her best friend, Francie Lane. Barbara was a local historian, a beloved community member, and will be deeply missed, especially by members of our history project. Beyond these, we have named aloud. Let us honor the joys and the sorrows that remain unspoken, but yet live in the silence of our hearts. Whatever stories of regret or loss, pride or praise, and the mixture of it all, may all of these feel the compassion embodied here in our community. For the grief we carry, may we find healing and hope. For the division in our nation, in our families, in our lives, for all those who are struggling with addiction or mental illness, for anyone feeling lost and alone. May each and all be met with a sustaining grace and a transforming love. The love that holds all of us and each of us and will not let us go. I invite you, if there's a joy or sorrow or tangled blessing that you want to lift up, to add it to our chat, lifting our stories up in community, finding a place for all that lives in our lives, for that shared promise that we make to one another to journey together. And of course, it is not just for sorrow and sadness, it's also for the many blessings of our lives, the beauty we create and receive in the everyday. So let us give thanks again and again for this life, tangled and all, for the joys and sorrows that are coming in, and those that are so tender that they may not have words. I invite us into a moment of shared silence together. Amen, and blessed be.
There is a brokenness, out of which comes the unbroken, a shatteredness, out of which blooms the unshatterable. There is a sorrow beyond all grief, which leads to joy, and a fragility out of whose depths emerges strength. There is a hollow space too vast for words, through which we pass with each loss, out of whose darkness we are sanctioned into being. There is a cry, deeper than all sound, whose serrated edges cut the heart as we break open to the place inside, which is unbreakable and whole, while learning to sing.
So I recently signed up to do something for the very first time. It's something kind of outside of my comfort zone. I signed up to be a coach for a team of fourth graders for Odyssey of the Mind. If you're not familiar, Odyssey of the Mind is an extracurricular school activity where you're on a team with other kids your age working to develop a creative solution to a very broadly defined problem. So it's team-based creative problem solving, basically. And there's a final competition in which your team presents your solution to a problem as an 8-minute performance. Now, I've always been really a people person to the core, but I've never considered myself a kid person. I love children, I have children, I really value children, but the realm of childhood has never been my comfort zone. I've always been more comfortable in the company of adults, really even as a child. So I've been asking myself lately, why on earth did I sign up to coach this team? Now, I could tell you a lot of reasons for this, and they would all be true. But the other day I had an aha. My desire to be involved in my own kids' fourth grade Odyssey of the Mind experience probably bears some relationship to my own fourth grade experience in the same program. Do you want to know what my primary Odyssey of the Mind memory is? It's one of those memories that's really, really clear because I must have revisited it a million times for some reason. The memory is this. We were creating a performance that had a clown theme. And all of the kids on the team were really stumped about what to name a country that is home to clowns. And then I had this insight and I shouted out, Czechoslovakia. And this one girl on the team, who we'll call Anne, she just laughed. She proclaimed that I was brilliant. And for that one moment, Anne shone her favor on me. And this was very significant because for the rest of the time, Anne pretty much alternated between tolerating me and hating my guts. Anne was very smart and very pretty, with long blonde hair and expensive name brand clothes. Anne was a powerful personality. One of her signature moves was that when we had a substitute teacher, Anne would routinely organize the entire class to do something that would humiliate and confuse the substitute. So she'd pass around a note, for example, with a specific time for all the students to start coughing or all stand up and go sharpen our pencils. And the subs always looked like they wanted to cry. Anne was in my class at school. She was on my Odyssey of the Mind team. And she was friends with basically all my friends. So when Anne was not there, playing with my friends was relaxed and fun. But whenever Anne was present, she held power in that group, and she set the rules. If she laughed, we laughed. If she rejected something or rejected someone, well, then it just wasn't worthy. The trouble was that I was the person who was often being rejected. I could not really figure out why. It seemed to have something to do with me being too loud, too enthusiastic, too silly, too big, too unrefined, too weird. I'll never know why I was the target of her eye rolls and sarcasm, why I was the conspicuous not receiver of certain invitations. I was the person who was definitely trying the hardest to please Anne, but I always fell short. I desperately tried to identify what was wrong with me so that I could root it out and eliminate it, and then Anne would accept me. But none of my strategies worked. Not the detailed map of popularity of every kid in my grade that I'd curated in my mind for the sole purpose of checking how my ranking compared to other people's. Not the hyper focus on acquiring name brand clothing or getting my bangs just right. Not the dieting to get my taller, larger body to become something smaller and more ideal. Not the observing and mimicking other kids trying to learn how to get it right, to weed out whatever it was that was so wrong with me. So I think I volunteered to coach this team because on some level I wanted to protect my younger fourth grade bullied self and protect my current fourth grade kids somehow. I wanted to protect my daughter from one of my shame stories. Shame comes in all shapes and sizes. Shame is so human and it is so awful. We humans are wired for love and belonging. It's a core part of our humanity and our soul. And so feeling totally unworthy of love and belonging is a suffering like nothing else. Shame feels like there's something fundamentally wrong with us, like we're defective, like there's something intrinsic about us that places us outside the circle of worthiness. Shame is different from guilt because guilt says that we did something bad, and shame says that we just are bad. We aren't born with shame. Shame builds slowly and it runs deep. In his book, The Wild Edge of Sorrow, Francis Weller compares the way that shame takes root to that common high school chemistry experiment of making rock candy, that confection of lumpy, crystallized sugar on a string. Weller writes, the experiment involves taking a glass of water and tying a string to a pencil and placing it in the glass of water. And then we slowly add sugar to the water, creating a solution. And nothing happens, nothing happens. And then when the saturation point is reached, the sugar molecules begin to crystallize around the string. And that is how it is with shame. We can endure a certain number of times when the connection is broken between us and the people we love and need. We can digest a certain volume of disappointments and criticism. But at some point, with enough repetition, the internal stories associated with those events, they reach a saturation point, and fictions crystallize into things that feel like truths. With shame, we internalize fictions and experience them as truths. That we aren't lovable, that we're responsible for the bad thing that happened, that we can never do anything right, or that we simply don't matter as much as other people. And we end up with a sense of some stain on our soul that if we ever shared it, if we ever let it see the light of day or talked about it, we would be utterly rejected, cast out, even somehow annihilated. Our fear of exposure moves us to bury our shame stories way down. Those stories of abandonment, rejection, violation, or cruelty. And we may be able to bury it deep enough to silence the shame most of the time. Yet our shame still haunts us, and we know it's there. Shame is the worst kind of ghost. And the awful truth is that shame actually thrives underground. Shame loves being buried. It loves that secrecy. Shame gets stronger in the dark, whispering to us to push people away, to lash out, to talk to ourselves or treat ourselves in punishing ways. And so we get just stuck in this shame place, feeling terrified to be exposed for how unacceptable we truly are. And yet we are also so deeply longing to be seen with compassion and understanding. And this is a place where we can get stuck sometimes for years or for a whole lifetime, not wanting to be exposed, but also just desperate to feel really seen and loved. I think this shame stuckness is a place that a lot of us are encountering this fall, when I see so many of us feeling on edge, feeling the ghosts of last year's COVID winter encroaching and wondering what this year will bring, feeling our animal selves hunkering down in response to the dwindling light and colder temperatures. And it is hard out there right now. People getting up in the faces of healthcare workers and educators and school board members with pushback about vaccines and masks, just blowing their stress and frustration into others. I know that here in our Foothills community, we've been grieving big losses and living with maladies of mind, body, and spirit. This fall has been hard for so many of us. And this can really kick up our old familiar shame stories. Those voices that tell us that we're not good enough, that we don't really belong, that what we're feeling is our fault. These are the shame ghosts that are haunting us. But there's good news, and the good news is that there is something to be done. But it might just be the last thing you want to do. Shame resilience begins with sharing our story. Shame loses its power when we pull back the curtains and let in the light of day. Shame cannot stand having words put to it and being spoken aloud. Shame just shrinks up and withers when someone else moves in to help us hold the story with compassion. This move of naming and sharing our shame, it can feel like an absolute impossibility because our shame tells us the lie that we're defective, and it's the worst possible thing to potentially expose ourselves. Someone might find out about us. But when we feel our shame activated and flared up, when something happens and we feel our throat constrict and we feel that sinking feeling in our gut and we just want to go hide in a hole, the best way to cast it out is to find someone safe and trustworthy to name it with. Busting up our shame looks like talking about it, describing all its pieces and feelings in the presence of someone who can listen to us deeply and talk through it in order to help us break that shame down and diffuse its power. Someone who can hold complexity, someone who knows us for both our struggles and challenges and our resilience and power, someone we trust. I want to note here that taking this leap can be so terrifying and feel tremendously awkward. And it can take a lot of time and practice and self-compassion and false starts and do-overs. And I know it's easy for me to just stand here and make this radical suggestion, but you are worth it. You deserve to live a robust and joyful and open-hearted life. You are so much more than the lies of your shame stories. Sharing our shame, it's not only life-giving and relieving and courageous. Sharing our shame saves lives. In a world racked with depression and anxiety and pandemic pain and climate anguish, the world needs us to practice making it okay to talk about shame. Because the alternative is being shackled to lies that diminish and immobilize us, and that doesn't serve anyone or anything. Every time we put our words to our shame, we are also modeling for someone else that is another way, that we are also a safe person for naming and diffusing shame with. I think of the friend that I call regularly to share my worst moments. In fact, I just called her this week in a spell of feeling inadequate and embarrassed and like I couldn't do anything right. And I realized that she's the person I call in those moments because basically she went first and showed me the ropes. She plunged into the deep end of the pool first and she shared her demons with me, for which truly I had only compassion. And I felt so honored that she would share so vulnerably with me, that she would trust me. And eventually I realized that I probably couldn't scare her off if I shared with her what was on my heart too. And do you know what happened? What happened was a deeper friendship that became a place where we could both ghost bust the demons that haunt us. And together we have practiced creating this force field that unmasks shame and hateful self-talk just for the sham that it is. It's a life-giving practice. This is a life-giving practice every time we put words to our shame. We practice dismantling dehumanizing lies that are keeping us paralyzed and small. When we talk about the elephant in the room of our soul, only to discover that we did not die from humiliation and horror, but that we're still here, feeling exposed and astonished and relieved, we start to see that there are so many other elephants to be named, and that speaking our truth, the truth of our experience, it's powerful. It's a kind of fuel that diminishes regimes, that gives people a reason to live. Shame just has no use, and it's everywhere. And as Unitarian Universalists, we just can't stand for it. It's against our religion to tolerate shaming, because we know we are all worthy. You are worthy. We're each worthy, and we each have an essential connection to that big sacred everything that no one can mess with. No one can touch that sacred spark. Let us be the people who have a practice of putting words to our shame. Let us be that people who are called to never tolerate shaming. Not in our schools, not in our families, not on social media, not by our elected officials or public servants. Let us be a people who live each day anchored in the conviction that every soul is sacred and squarely located within the circle of worthiness. Before I wrap up today, I thought you might want to know where the story with Anne ended. In the 6th grade, I was getting ready one night for a sleepover with my group of friends, and I got a phone call. informing me that I was not invited to the sleepover after all. I never imagined that this could actually happen. And so I cried and I cried. I remember my mom being really sweet with me. And I now know that she was also overflowing with maternal rage. And the next day at school, I didn't have a lunch table to sit at anymore. I'd been totally dumped by my group of friends. So I walked over to another table of girls from my music class, and I explained to them that there wasn't a place for me on my old lunch table, and I asked if I could sit with them. And they smiled and showed me a chair. Over the course of the week, I eventually told them everything that happened about the phone call, the bullying, how it always felt so worthless around Anne. And they were so kind. They made a place for me at the table, quite literally, welcomed me in, and I began my journey of finding my people, which included lots of dead ends and surprises, but it was always better than desperately striving to please. It was always better than the unwinnable, unfigure-outable conundrum of what was wrong with me. You are worthy. You are beautiful. You are worthy. This is our truth. We are all in this together, doing the holy work of casting out shame and calling in compassion. May it be so. Amen.
How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. How deeply you're connected, how deeply you're connected, how deeply you're connected to my soul.
I just took a screenshot of some of the comments from the chat and I sent it to Elaine, just sharing the appreciation for her message with her. And I know she was preaching that live this morning for our 8:30 crew. As a part of this series on Living with Ghosts, I've been engaging in these really wonderful conversations with members of our community about times where they've had to come to terms with something in their past so they could live into the future with more freedom. And this morning, we're going to hear from Erin Valenti Nelson. I want to give a little content warning, which is that the story that Erin is going to share about her healing is after her experience of being raped. And so for whatever reason, that might not be the story that's right for you to hear this morning. Now, it doesn't focus on the incident, but rather the healing journey anyway afterwards. But that is the content. And so if you want to put an 8-minute timer on your watch and go and find something to drink or go for a little walk and then come back, you can rejoin us after her story is done. We are sharing these stories to exercise that shame, right? To bring the experiences of those in the pews to the forefront, because In our UU faith, it is all of our stories that provide that lived experience for our living. And so I'm going to turn it over to this excerpt of this conversation I had with Erin.
When I was 21, I was held at gunpoint and raped by a stranger. I had gone home with a guy I knew, and he was there. One thing led to another. He was charged with kidnapping, rape, stealing the gun he used, and he only ended up being charged for stealing the gun. And like, as a survivor of sexual assault, everyone said, "You're so lucky. He actually went to prison." But for me, it was like, well, he didn't go to prison for what he did, to me at least. No, when you're 21, you are just learning about the world. And so I was really able to experience finding myself at a young age, and then finding a lot of like self-love and self-compassion at a young age. It sucks that it took like a traumatic experience, but I do think that it helped me become an adult a little bit quicker. The first stage was allowing myself to be in it and to feel it. You know, there were a lot of sad days, and I allowed myself to feel the depression and feel the anxiety and go to therapy every week and really just like be in it. As humans don't want to feel the uncomfortable things. But I knew that if I wanted a chance of like having a vibrant life, I had to feel it. And I didn't put a timeline on how long I could feel it. And so it was years, you know, years of this like really anxious, scared to go out in public, sad, kind of hermit lifestyle. But I think that was a very important beginning phase to my healing, to just allow myself to be in the dark place. And I had one friend in particular who I would come home from work. I was working in early childhood half days. So I would come home and I would spend the rest of the day until bedtime with her. And she knew I needed it. And to have someone there, and to have someone who I didn't have to talk about it with, but we could just like do low key things together, really helped. And then the other piece was my connection to spirit. And at that time, I hadn't had, you know, my spiritual awakening yet, but I had a very profound experience like during the assault, and I knew that something bigger and greater than me was watching over me and keeping me safe. It felt like there was light at the end of the tunnel, even if I couldn't quite see it yet. The next chapter was getting the F out of that town. And here comes Fort Collins. I knew I wanted to be in Fort Collins, and I knew that I could find myself here and I could make a community. And so here I came. I had a job lined up in a childcare center, and I was just going to work and make friends. The town it happened in is very small. So it's like, okay, you drive by this neighborhood where it happened, or you see the face of someone you saw that night before it happened. And so there were a lot of these triggers. So being able to move to this town where I didn't know anybody, barely, allowed me to just like do some extra healing and figure out who I wanted to be moving forward.
What did you find?
I found foothills.
I didn't mean to set it up like that, I swear.
It was perfect though. Like truly, like foothills is such a big part of my life in Fort Collins, in that community, right? Like I came here to build community for myself. I didn't think I was going to find it in a church, and I did. And I found a wonderful husband and really cool new friends. I found my voice. I mean, I was able to tell my story to the legislatures of Wyoming, a bunch of like crusty old white guys, and get this civil protection order put in place. There was not one. And so we really helped fill that gap. And it was invigorating. Like it brought life back to me to be able to share my story, people listen, and then like change was made from it. I moved to Fort Collins, like leading with that story. I'm a survivor. Here's my voice. And I needed that. I needed to have a couple years of doing that. And now in my healing process, I don't quite have to lead with that story. It's not the only thing that defines me. And that feels good too. And I found myself, like I found who I am becoming.
I want to hear more about that person you're becoming.
A little bit witchy, pretty spiritual, kind of snarky, and it's fun. It's especially like becoming a mom too. Motherhood is a transformation in and of itself. I feel like I'm growing up so I can see these pieces of my story layering on top of each other in such a beautiful way.
What, as you kind of look back at that journey, what do you make of it?
I feel really proud of myself. Proud of all of the hard work and all of the sad days and all of the not sad days. I'm proud of myself. I actually had this really beautiful moment this spring where I was able to forgive my perpetrator. I read this book a friend I went to high school with just wrote. It's called The Three Mothers. And it's about Martin Luther King Jr., James Baldwin, and Malcolm X, their moms, and just like their journeys and how these really prominent Black men, how their work that they did was all thanks to their moms. And it gave me so much insight into the experience of a Black man, how racism is like so tangled up. And I don't know why, I don't know how, but like I was listening to the audiobook, I was like planting seeds because it was in the spring, and I just like it like released, and I forgave him, and I didn't think I was ever going to be able to forgive him. It was really beautiful. And so I feel like that's like this other piece of the healing, right? Like I did all this like therapy, and but then like things can come back up, and then you heal it again, or you heal it in a different way. And, you know, I think we're 7 years out now, and I don't know if they think I'm all better now. But I'm not. Like I don't think I'll ever be like all better. I don't think that's how it works.
If you're not all better, what are you?
I am alive. I'm living. And life isn't always easy or beautiful.
But you're living it.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing this.
Thank you for reaching out and thinking of asking.
Have so much appreciation for Erin for sharing that story. And when we were talking with her, we both had a moment that I excerpted in which we provided we both just had this moment of appreciation for her friend in those moments, who was able to just receive her and just be with her. It's these stories that really often go unhidden and are the places where shame can so easily grow. And so that's our hope in these services, that we get the opportunity to shine those lights, to be able to show the twisted journey that healing brings us through, that is not easy, and yet it is so worth it. And to be able to do that in community, to say that you're not alone, even if you haven't shared your story with anyone, is really powerful. And I you heard my voice in there, that I didn't set it up of like a testimonial about Foothills, but I think it's true that we find these communities that say we believe you and we believe in you, and it makes all the difference. And I'm gonna shift us a little bit into talking about our For the Future campaign, which is our pledge campaign that we kicked off. And I'm going to invite us to watch a video and another testimonial about some of the caring ministry that we do here at Foothills.
Hi, I'm Mary Pat. There was a post on Facebook a few days ago. It's a cartoon of Big Panda and Tiny Dragon. Which is more important? Asked Big Panda. The journey or the destination? The company, said Tiny Dragon. In the middle of the night on October 12th, I was diagnosed with COVID. While on a virtual call with the doctor on the 13th, she could see my health was deteriorating, and she ordered an infusion at the hospital the next day. I couldn't make meals, couldn't walk the dog. My husband and I both had COVID. Joy, our dog, was my biggest worry. 80 plus pounds of energy and enthusiasm and love. Who was going to walk her? In my brain fog and massive headaches, I remember Katie calling and asking if we wanted meals, to be on a meal train. Yeah, I said that would probably be helpful. But our dog, what about our dog? I remember very little of that call or the next few days. But what I did remember was that the call came from the caring ministry team at Foothills. People in this community came forward. A Walk Joy the Dog sign-up genus was started by a remarkable woman, and an equally remarkable woman signed on to help her. And who knows? It may be the first ever sign-up genius for walking a dog. People signed up to bring meals. Some of the people we had never met before. They didn't know us, we didn't know them, but I now consider them friends. There were people who would text me and say, I couldn't sign up for bringing a meal, but I made some soup. Can we drop it by? Or, here's some muffins. I'll leave them on the porch. Or, how about some dessert? I just made banana cake. Who was going to turn that down? The response was incredible. We were cared for. I was able to lean back and feel this community's arms around me. And I believe that helped my recovery. Foothills has come through for us in ways we never anticipated needing 13 years ago when we joined. We have always pledged, to any church we were in membership with. It was an obligation because, like anything else you believe in, it takes a commitment of time, money, and talent. Time and talent are needed and appreciated and important, but so are the bones. And the bones are money. It isn't an obligation for us anymore. It is a gift to be given to our friends, to our community. I heard years ago someone say, why would I want to give? And the answer back was, why wouldn't you want to give? I agree. Why wouldn't I want to give a gift monthly to a community that has made this kind of a commitment to us and our dog? Because even our dog knows it's the company.
And so we need you to join us in supporting our For the Future campaign. We haven't done a pledge campaign in a few years because of our capital campaign, but now is the time for us to make real our commitments financially to support the work that we're doing for that future that we're building together. So there's a few ways that we want you to get involved. First is to evaluate your pledge, to commit to renewing that pledge and at a 10% increase.
Now, if you haven't yet made a pledge for Foothills, we want to invite you to participate in being a part of this work for the future and find your place of giving, of what generosity means to you, what peace you feel, what sense of partnership you feel in this work we're doing together.
I want to say thank you for supporting and fulfilling your pledge this year, which is allowing that foundation to be strong.
Thank you for your partnership. Thank you for your generosity. Thank you for being for the future together.
For the world that we love, that we love, for the world that we need, for the world that we need.
Thank you, Mary Pat, for sharing your story. Now, earlier, I think on Friday, you might have received a pledge card in your email. This is an ask that we sent out. If you didn't receive it, you can go to foothillsuu.org/forthefuture and fill out your pledge card there. Once you've determined your pledge, we'd love it if you would to have your help in spreading the word, as we're looking for partners in talking to others about their pledge. I know talking about money can be something that's a little bit of a hurdle to get over, and yet these conversations are about what Mary Pat was talking about. They're about how much our community means to each other and why giving is a part of that. You can let us know if you want to be part of those conversations when you pass in that pledge card. I want to thank you for being for the future so we can meet our goals that we have as a community, that we've set as a community. And while our pledge drive is focusing on the future, our offering today is very much focused on the here and now. Last week, we began a mini campaign to help us strengthen our digital ministry offerings as we finish out this year. And we'd love to be able to create a little bit more of a dependable back end and make sure our staff team has the equipment to support these services with great audio and great visuals. We know it's not our usual pitch for our Share the Plate offering, so often those offerings are going towards the needs out in the community. But with COVID numbers rising, we are grateful to be able to keep offering a very strong and steady online ministry, even while we're offering in-person services at a limited capacity. So everything that you give through text to the number 84321, you text the amount plus the word share, or donate it at foothillsuu.org/sharetheplate. The link is in the chat. All of those offerings will go towards the purchase of equipment and licenses that allow us to continue to have this platform for our digital ministry, supporting our work of unleashing courageous love across northern Colorado and into the world of the internet. Your generosity will now be gratefully received.
Trust the movement, I negate the chaos, uplift the negative, I'll show up at the table again and again and again. I'll close my mouth and learn to listen.
Well, we come to the end of our service, and like we do every Sunday, we firmly root it in gratefulness. We do this to build a habit of seeing the truth of our connection and our love to this world, even when there's so many stories of pain and disconnection. And being inspired by Mary Pat and Aaron and Elaine sharing about their lives, I thought this morning we'd do something a little different in our gratefulness. I'm going to invite you to put in the chat the name of someone who you are grateful for, someone that allowed you to kind of step out of your shame and be who you are, who you were in that moment. Someone that offered you that care, that allowed you to cast off those shells and step into the sunlight of being seen. for all of those people that you are grateful for Diana, for our partners, for Joyce, for Nadara, for Tara, for Lou, stepmoms, Vicky, Marcy, our grandmothers, Lars and Kathy, TJ, for all of these people, for Beth, for people in our writing groups, for our baby brothers, for all of these people. Allow us to step fully into ourselves. We are grateful. I'm going to invite us into our closing song. I hope you'll sing out, which is I Know I Can. That last shot of those three women from that like stock video, every time I see it, I'm like, we have three people in our church that could recreate that shot and it would be amazing. So that's my challenge out to all you. If you want to get together, recreate that shot and send it to me, I would love that. Well, I'm going to close our service this morning with a riff on our reading from Rashonda Ray. There is a brokenness out of which comes the unbroken, a shatteredness out of which blooms the unshatterable, and a fragility out of whose depths emerges strength. May each one of us break open to the place inside which is unbreakable and whole while learning to sing. Our service is over, and yet our service to this world and each other just begins. And go in peace and in love. Amen.